Hi, everyone. Good evening. For those of you that have been here before to some of these classes, you know me. I am Courtney. I am a child and adolescent therapist, and I have been doing this in partnership with the district and North County Family Counseling Specialists, which is the agency that us therapists work with. We've been doing this for a long time now. 2016, 2017 is when I started doing these classes. So I love doing these classes. I am so glad you guys are all here. And I hope everybody is having a good Wednesday and enjoying hopefully some sunshine. Ani and I were just talking about it. I hope that it stays, because I definitely could use it. Okay, so let's just jump in and get started. I typically like to do these classes more in a conversational kind of discussion form or fashion, just because I think it's more palatable for everybody to not just hear me talk for 2 hours. So I'll have a couple discussion questions. I do have an exercise for us to complete together if we're able to get to that, if time allows. If not, you can kind of take it home with you. The PDF version of the slides is in the chat. Ani usually shares that a few times. You can just click on that to download it. And if you have any questions throughout, regardless of whether it's material based question or a question specifically about your and your child's circumstances, I love answering questions. That's part of why I love doing this. I like to problem solve and brainstorm with you parents. So if you have a question, you can either raise your hand using that feature. You can just start talking and I'll get the hint, or you can throw it in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable or don't wish to use the microphone option, I check the chat very frequently and I try to answer questions as I go. Today, we're talking about mindfulness and other coping skills, and this relates to you learning the skill as a parent so that you can teach that skill to your children. But also, this is going to I'm going to give you information about why mindfulness is evidence-based and why we encourage mindfulness, why I personally think as a therapist, mindfulness is a great skill to learn, again, like I said, both for you as a parent and for your kids. Some of this information, like I said, I've been harping on some of this stuff in the past classes. And so you might hear a couple of points that I've kind of foot stomped throughout this 10 course module, whatever you want to call it. We've done 10 of these by the end of it. Our last one is, if I'm not mistaken, it's May 29th, the last Wednesday of the month. And that is the conversation on social media and technology, which is typically pretty popular. And I've been uncovering all this new research. So I'm hopeful that you guys will get to come to that and we can have a chat about phones and screens and all that good kind of stuff. All right, so let's jump in. Mindfulness and other skills. I love to start these conversations off with a quote. And the quote that I chose today, it's up on the screen. Hopefully everyone can see that. Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. I don't really know how to say his name. Thich Nhat Hanh. Does anybody have a comment about that? Can you relate to that quote? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Does anybody use breathing currently in your kind of repertoire or toolbox of coping skills for yourself? Does anybody like the imagery of the quote? Go ahead and share. Anybody and everybody is free to share. I'll say it one more time. Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. I'll tell you guys, the reason that I like this quote so much is in part the imagery that comes from that. Clouds in a windy sky. That's kind of beautiful to me. And the reality that as a therapist, I kind of try to tell people this a lot. Feelings come and go, right? Sometimes we feel like, or our kids feel like that feeling that they're experiencing is going to last forever. And sometimes it really does feel that way. And the reality, if we're talking grief or loss or sadness, worry, whatever that feeling is, yeah, it may seem like it's going to hang around forever. And the reality is that it doesn't, right? And so this person in particular is utilizing this idea that like breathing through your emotions, that's the anchor. That's what keeps you held firmly in one place. That's what kind of gives you the ability to weather that storm or to experience that tumultuous wind. And so I feel like that's really beautiful, and it's really a poetic kind of nice visual for us to understand that this is kind of how we can get through those really tough emotions. And at the very least, if you're not able to use it, or you're like, that doesn't work for me, or I don't like that, you could really try this with your kids, because kids really do. We know, and I'll get into all of this. The brain is not fully developed, right? In all of our children. If you're here for a child that's under 25, their brain is not developed yet. And I do refer to kids that are 18, 19, 20 still as children, because in reality, if we look at the brain, their brain is not fully developed. And so they still have some of those, their brain still has some learning and growing to do, is what I'm trying to get at. So my hope is that this quote for you, you might like it. It might get you just thinking about what we're going to talk about tonight. And that is, we all need an anchor. We need a way to get through the really hard feelings. And at the very least, we need to equip our children with some form of emotional regulation, because if we don't, they find their own ways of coping. And not all of those are helpful. So my goal for you guys tonight is a couple of goals. Well, yeah, a couple of objectives. I want you guys to learn how stress and these type of negative factors actually affect the brain, and subsequently your children's overall health. I want you guys to be able to gain an understanding of how mindfulness specifically as a skill can yield both physical and psychological benefits. I'm big on mindfulness. You guys already know this. I'm a therapist, so this is my like bread and butter of helping people deal with feelings and with their emotions. And it's something that was kind of ingrained in me when I was working for Rady Children's Hospital. Most of you guys probably know that. Most of you guys, if you have children, you've probably taken them to one of the clinics or a specialty clinic or the hospital. And we did mindfulness all the time. As therapists, we were doing mindfulness Mondays, where all the therapists would get together and do mindfulness exercises. And we were teaching that to the kids that we were working with. I also want you guys to be able to practice these techniques and essentially help reduce negative effects of stress in both your life and the lives of your children and adolescents. So hopefully there's no questions about that. We're going to go ahead and jump in. One of my curiosities, and again, I love doing this and getting some discussion going if anyone is willing or able to be vulnerable with us and kind of share your experience. What experience do you have either with mindfulness or meditation? Because there is this the practice that mindfulness is typically lumped as a meditation, a form of meditation. So, what experience do you have personally with any form of meditation, whether it be mindfulness or other, as a stress reducer? And if you do have some experience, please share it with us. If you don't, how do you manage stress? Because I'm certain we all have to do that.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. All
Hi.
right. This is Dorothy. Nice to meet you all. Um, the way I've been meditating for a long time, and actually, in my 20s, I was so stressed out that the doctors, I started getting, my body would shake a lot, or like my body would react to things without me being able to control it. So the doctor told me that I needed to meditate, and as soon as I started meditating, everything went away. I became more at peace with myself. And this is my way to go to whenever I feel stressed out or overwhelmed. I have a lot going on. So, what I do is usually go outside and go for a nice walk and just disconnect with everything because um, things can wait. And, 5, 10 minutes of a break would help me to get back to myself, take that stress away from me, that feeling of anxiety or anxiousness rather. And so it hugely helps me dealing with kids when I'm stressed out, just to be in a different mindset. And so I'd highly recommend that. That's for sure. Breathing exercises. That's it.
Oh man, that's awesome, Dorothy. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. It sounds like you were kind of dealing with some things. Stress was getting heavy, and I thought it was interesting that the doctor, I'm like, oh, what doctor did you go to? Because they actually suggested to do meditation, and it worked, and it helped you, and that is amazing. If I could ask one follow-up question, Dorothy, in what way do you feel like you taught your children any of that? Do they see you doing it? Do they like, do you talk to them about it? Um,
Um, so to be honest, frankly, my partner was not into it and kind of told me that not to do that with my children. He was against that. And now I feel like they're at the point of choosing for themselves if they want to or not. So I am in mainstream, in the mainstream, and now a lot of therapists and someone wrote he was what he really didn't believe in meditation, and he was for sort of forbidding me to um, share that with kids. So but they know from other therapists because they are in therapy as well, and that it's so beneficial. And we're beginning together to meditate and be mindful. The thing is, there's more to meditation. Once you start meditating, you there's not only that benefit. Sometimes it goes to the next level, but that's another session, I guess. That you could talk about a little bit more. But so, bottom line is, it helped me tremendously. It helps, I believe, like my friends have been meditating a lot as well, and it changed my mind, my mindset. It changed my life. Highly, highly recommend that. Yeah.
oh, so there's so much bundled in that. At first, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry that was not allowed to be taught to the kids, and yet here we are. They are seeing and kind of enjoying some of the fruits of that now. And so I guess that's kind of a good way to look at it, or at least a good turnaround that now that
Absolutely.
they're getting into that because yeah, I mean, everyone has a potential for their own kind of philosophical or spiritual or whatever background. I try to I think as a therapist, I try to take mindfulness as a form of meditation and break it down where there's like, you don't have to kind of be a religion or a spiritual, and
Absolutely.
you can and you can't. You could do whatever works for you, but I maybe there's a lot of people that have that kind of maybe there's a barrier there because they think, oh, meditation, that's a little bit, out of my comfort zone, or I'm not spiritual, or I'm not religious, or whatever that may be. And the hope is that people can adopt this skill as kind of fuss free. There's no expectations. We could use this in any way that works for us. So wonderful feedback, Dorothy. Thank you so
Oh,
much
thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
for sharing. It's always lovely when I have people in here who are either really well versed in meditation or they already know how to do it. I think it really helps other parents. So yeah, thank you for sharing again. I really appreciate that. And I'm curious if other people have any exposure to mindfulness or meditation. And if you do, if you're willing to share or put in the chat. Um, and it doesn't even have to be maybe mindfulness or meditation. I can kind of lump uh, in what ways have you taught your children or guided them or suggested ways to manage their stress? If it's not mindfulness or meditation, what things do you suggest or teach or guide your children to do in order to manage their stress levels? And kind of broaden the conversation field a little bit. And I will just say too, if no one's really wanting to say anything just yet, I will say that I also think that some parents that I see come to me and they don't really know what to teach their children or how to guide them or what to suggest in terms of stress management, either because they don't kind of really have those skills, or they're really busy and it's just kind of like we're on autopilot and we're going through life, or we just kind of assume like, hey, they're going to do what works for them, or maybe they're getting taught some of that stuff, exposure at school, or if they're coaches or whoever they're exposed to. I think some parents also experience that, and that's okay too.
Oh, I was gonna share my work because you mentioned EAP program before, and like there's like wellness every month, and they offered a free app like Smiling Mind, and my kid did that. And it's like age 7, just Smiling Mind is the app, and then he found it on my phone and does it, and then it's for 7 to 9 year olds. But I mean, mindfulness for me is like improving concentration, counting the waves, seeing the ocean, being outside, walking, getting sunshine, and even for like different areas of work or being like Mother's Day and all the different roles everyone plays is like just taking time to stand up, stretch, get outside, get away, calm down, breathe, like don't react right away. So that's what I do is like calm down at least 5 or 10 minutes in the 24 hours. And then that's what I found, the Smiling Mind app and all that I mentioned.
Thank you so much, Angie, for sharing. I put it in the chat just to make sure. I hope I spelled it right, like just kind of normally, but that way other parents could, jump on that and use that app as well. I mean, what it sounds like is, yeah, you're using like some movement, some of the mindfulness, just kind of using those skills and then teaching your kids and then allowing them to utilize the app, which is awesome. I think as technologically interwoven as we are as a society now, it's like we've got to get some good apps and some good things coming out of on our phones so that our kids can enjoy that benefit and get that experience while they're using them. Thank you so much for sharing, Angie. That's wonderful.
I was going to share one last thing, like each Google Classroom and this SMUSD, there's like different teachers, they have stuff for kids in their own classrooms to like calm down in their circle time every day or every Friday. I don't know. So I was going to share that.
Oh, awesome. I don't know, Ani might have more details on that, but that is awesome. Yeah. So you're saying like teacher specific too. Sometimes they'll have little things that the kids can use either to kind of cope or manage behaviors or reduce stress a little bit. And that's awesome. I'm curious to like what they're throwing in there, or what they're using, but okay. I don't have anybody else that wants to share. I guess this might be a good easy one. Last question. How, and you could just throw a number in the chat. How would you rate your child in stress management? Like their ability to manage their own stress? 0 out of 10, 0 being no ability to manage their own stress at all, and 10 being they're like a monk. They're like Gandhi. They can manage their stress, in a very Zen way, and they're really on it. I'm so curious. We can kind of leave that if people want to throw that in throughout, or maybe I'll keep coming back to that question and kind of asking you guys. Yeah, I think that's interesting too, because of course every child is different and some kids are inherently a little bit a little bit better at managing stress than others. I think we all know temperament is different. I think everybody, when I was having my second child, everybody was like, oh, no two are alike, right? They're so different. And that's absolutely true. So I am curious to see how your children kind of match up. Do you feel like, some of your kids are better than the other kids at managing their stress or managing their emotions? I certainly think that experience is very typical. And there's some other factors in that we get into in these talks. But if you find that your child is struggling, or you see that your child is struggling maybe with behaviors, or they kind of come home and they're kind of in a funk, or maybe, like I've said before, we've identified maybe some like mood issues, or some psychological stuff going on. Stress is pervasive and it affects us all. And I think what we'll get into is kids now, right? They're faced with so many different threats to their physical and psychological well-being, right? And I'm going to go ahead and like list some of those. The reality is that kids are, disengaging from school. Kids are becoming alienated from parents, right? And a lot of this is developmental, right? Their body image, they become self-conscious at this age, right? There's more peer influence as they age and they get a little bit older. There's more pressure to engage in specific activities, right? Like it could be sexual activity, romantic relationships as they age and as they mature. I think there's more in terms of the pressure, right, to fit in. There's a lot of effects with social media that I'll get into in that topic, where there's so much pressure to kind of fit in, be cool. And a lot of that sometimes will coincide with participation in some what we call like risky behaviors, right? And risky behaviors in and of itself are not a terrible thing, because we want our children to be exposed to the world and to be exposed to like the normalcy of experimenting or trying things or being exposed to certain things. And yet we want them to have that healthy foundation and the ability to come back from that, right? Bounce back from that. There's heavy exposure to media now, and that I think at times it really models these behaviors that are at odds sometimes with parent, family, community values, because your child is going to be exposed to so much, right? So there's less control on what they're being exposed to, whereas the generation before, or the years before 2010, the 2000s, before this big shift happened, there were less of these things, right? There was less of this exposure. And so I think contemporary adolescence, there's such a higher threat because of some of these things. And so I think that what we have found in the research is that in addition to that, this is kind of the baseline, which is high levels of school-related stress for adolescents just in general, right? So not talking about the added risks from social media and the way culture and society has shifted. Adolescents have always reported high levels of school-related stress, right? So this could be stress related to homework, to the tests that they're taking, whether it's just kind of normative testing or if it's standardized testing, things at the end of the year, things that push them along to the next grade. Expectations that whether the parents or the people around them or themselves have for achievement and performance. That's typically a big one. I need to do well, right? In school, I need to get this specific type of grade and I need to do this specific thing and perform to this degree. Also, adolescents report significant levels of stress with interactions with peers, teachers, and parents. And so that's more when we look at interpersonal relationships and interpersonal stress. And if we look at this from a developmental point of view, this makes a lot of sense because, as I said, there's parts of the brain that are very underdeveloped or not developed yet in the adolescent brain. And so interpersonal relationships are a little bit more challenging at that age. I'm sure you guys remember when you were in middle school and high school, I mean, even like elementary school, right? When we start developing the social structure that happens and the change that happens when we advance in years, it's incredibly stressful. Do I fit in, this group or that group? These people like me, those people don't. There's a fight about this. It's incredibly stressful for young people. And so what we've kind of touched on this a little bit. We know that there's all this neurobiological change, right? Which means that this is a particularly sensitive period. We talk about structural change. We talk about hormonal change. I've talked about this in the past particularly in the sleep hygiene class that I did a couple months ago. Hormones, particularly during puberty onset, there's dramatic change in hormones during that time. And then there's also this incredible plasticity of the brain during this time, which means they're like sponges and they're absorbing all of this, right? And we talked a little bit about like neural pruning and how routine, what a child does over and over again. It's like if you've ever seen one of those nature shows where there's snow everywhere and there's, a pack of animals and they're traveling through one specific channel, right? As to avoid slowing down or getting stopped up or, it's this etched out river. And that's what the neural connections look like. you continue on that path, the same path. And so neural connections get pruned that they're not using. And so there's this incredibly important time where neural pruning is happening at a higher rate. And also kids are incredibly reactive emotionally during this time. And so what we want to do is, as those neural connections are being pruned, we want to help them manage that, what I call limbic reactivity, which is essentially the limbic system is the emotional center of the brain. And so if we can help kids manage that increased reactivity, those exaggerated fear processes and the strong emotional interference, meaning things become more easily distractible from an emotional level, right? If we can help them with that, we can essentially help combat against some of these threats. Okay. And so this is really the big reason why I'm so passionate about giving kids emotional regulation skills and very specifically mindfulness. And I'll get into a little bit of the background about why I believe these particular coping skills are better than others as we go on through the evening. So I know that was a little bit of the kind of background brain science-y stuff. If anyone has questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I talked about a couple of these points already in terms of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex of the brain is being fine-tuned. That's that frontal area that I like to call the secretary of the brain. It's the judgment, the planning, the impulse control, the regulation, right, of our emotion. All of that in a child is very immature, if speaking from a biological standpoint. Okay. So a lot of times I try to tell parents this and I remind them, asking your child to do certain things is like asking somebody who is missing a limb to play the guitar, right? Like they are not physically, biologically capable yet of doing some of these things, right? The judgment, the impulse control, the planning, long-term consequences of things, the emotional regulation. And so coupled with this fact that the chronic or excessive stress can actually create damage to parts of the brain that's critical for these things, we want to really give them, we have to be the secretary for their brain, right? We have to give them those skills and help them regulate. I like to call it co-regulating because we are helping them regulate. They are not able to do it on their own. And I would say this is true of children up until their brain is developed. Okay. So, like I said, hormones are happening, that hormone change, the onset of puberty, all those neural pathways being carved out or pruned. And then we have cortisol reactivity, right? Kids are exceptionally reactive to cortisol. Their systems are very highly reactive, more so than us, to cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Okay. And so, yeah, knowing all of that, what I'm not asking you to do is just give your kids a hall pass or say this is an excuse and they can do whatever they want. They don't have the ability to do something else. Not at all. I would certainly encourage discipline and leadership and co-regulation so that they can learn these things, and we're creating those new neural pathways, right? By encouraging them to do these things and to do these things with them. And so we had a parent share just a little bit ago where she was saying, you know, my kids weren't really doing this when they were younger, and there was some reasoning for that. And yet now we're kind of doing this together, right? So there's this, the reality is hopefully kids will kind of shift and they'll come around and they'll kind of understand, oh, this is actually like, look at how much this helps my mom, right? Like I see that she's really stressed and she does this, and then it seems to work, right? And so this is all kind of happening subconsciously. And yet you might even notice when you start using certain language, or you start doing certain things and adding certain things to your routine or your own kind of coping skill toolbox, your kids will really take on that language and take on those behaviors. And remember, a lot of that has to do with just the fact that like they want to be like you subconsciously, right? This is all about mirror neurons, which means they mirror what they see and they do what we do, right? I have said this so many times. Hopefully, a lot of you, if you've been here before, you're not tired of it. But I always say, like, kids do not do what we tell them to do. Kids do what we do. And that, if I could implant one seed within you guys as parents, and you leave here with one thing, it would be that. And it would be your kids are going to do what you do. So if you are managing your stress, or at least trying to managing the cortisol by some of the techniques that we've talked about both in the past and that we'll talk about tonight, and really like using the language and identifying, hey, I'm really stressed right now, I'm going to try this thing, they're going to do what you do. And so yeah, I hope that that's the one thing that you can take away, if nothing else. All right. So I have this to me, it looks very not complicated, but a little bit much. But I created this cool chart because I was really excited about it. And then I realized, who knows who's going to get anything out of this. But what I'd like to share with you guys is that if you look at the chart that I've put on the screen for this slide, it's a way of breaking down. There are a couple ways or avenues that we and our children can go down when we encounter stress or distress in our lives, right? And so a simple way of thinking about this is that there's a trigger that happens in your life, right? Something that triggers the stress. And we have to remember, stress is not just some like concept, this abstract concept. Stress is cortisol. It is a hormone that's produced in our bodies when we encounter specific distressing events or triggers. And so on a really simple kind of level, we're talking about cortisol when we talk about stress. And so the different avenues that we can take, if you look on the second row, we can either disengage, we can either mindfully engage, or we can over-engage. Okay, so there's kind of three options that most human beings, I would say all human beings, in a psychological sense, this is what we do. We either disengage, which looks like we avoid. So we might avoid the feeling. We might try to get as far away as possible from that feeling. And that's what I mean when I say avoid. We might completely disengage. So we might just shut down, right? You might know friends or family or even children who do this. They just disengage, stop talking, the eyes go glassy, there's no responding. Or there's aggression, right? An externally activated kid or person who's aggressive or violent, or they're breaking stuff or throwing things, or you might know someone like this. I will say, I think a couple of generations ago that was pretty prominent in the way that people handled things, handled stress, was that like throwing things, right? Yelling. This includes like self-harm, right? Which I think for adolescents, I talked a little bit about this in the depression talk. Self-harm is a disengagement. It is a negative coping skill that kids are using in order to avoid or disengage from their feelings. And so this is what disengagement looks like. When we choose to disengage as a way of managing stress or that distressing feeling, what we call maladaptive cognition, so like this negative way of thinking and this negative tolerance is reinforced. And that leads to dysregulation. Okay, so we have this we create this negative pattern of I'm distressed, I avoid it, right? I push it as far away as I can, and then it reinforces that that's what makes me feel better. And so that's what the brain wants to do over and over again. And that's in turn what we do, right? And so this is why maybe your parents or you, like, this is why this is normal now. I just avoid whenever I feel a feeling, I kind of shove it down. And I know that I talk to men a lot in my work. And for some of you that don't know, I was active duty military for some time. And this is the experience of a lot of men or active responders or people in high stress environments. And this leads to further dysregulation because we're not dealing with the stress. We're not being mindful about our feelings. We're creating this negative pattern, this negative cycle of avoiding, disengaging, self-harm or aggression. And that becomes the norm. Okay, so the other option that we have is on the other side of the spectrum is some people tend to over engage, right? And this looks like hypervigilance. I think the biggest hallmark of over engagement in terms of stress is rumination. And I think that our specific society right now, I see the most rumination that I've ever seen. And what I mean by rumination is that negative replaying of events or the negative reliving or rehashing or just constantly thinking about what's wrong in our lives, right? That's what rumination is. And if we over engage by doing that every day or just anytime something really negative happens, we just think and think and think about it. That also reinforces that pattern, right? So instead of trying to reduce the distress, or instead of reducing the distress, it's actually reinforcing that distress, right? Because we're living it over and over and over again, that we constantly worry about the thing, or we're constantly worried about that negative thing or the thing that we're anxious about. And we're essentially creating a very ruminative thinking style, which is very characteristic of people who experience depression and anxiety and things like that, other obsessive disorders. And that is dysregulation, right? So somewhere in the middle, what we want to do is we want to mindfully engage, right? Which is why I push so hard on mindfulness, because it teaches that there's some tolerance of positive and negative feelings, right? There's extreme tolerance of positive feelings, but there's a learned tolerance of when things are negative, when I don't feel good, when that stress creeps in, when the depression, the sadness, the worry, the whatever those, the grief, we as human beings have to learn how to tolerate that. When we tolerate that, there's less reactivity in the future, right? We don't live that over and over and over again. And so distress tolerance, that behavior, the actual act of tolerating that negative feeling, that's reinforced instead of that maladaptive thing, that negative pattern being reinforced. And so we get regulation, right? We get emotional balance. We get a perception of being efficacious, right? We perceive ourselves to be able to handle it and to have success in doing so, right? We perceive ourselves to be able to handle it. We have increased positive mood. We find that there's an incredible decrease in what I was calling rumination, that like thinking about the negative thing over and over and over again. We have increased attention. We have improved emotional functioning. We have enhanced academic performance, behavior control in children. They're less impulsive. And obviously, this leads to better outcomes in mental health and overall well-being. And so that's kind of where our goal is going to be, is that mindful engagement. And I really hope that somebody else enjoys this slide as much as I do. I was like working really hard to create all the boxes and make them all line up. But essentially, that's the message. We want to do the mindful engagement. We want to be able to teach our children how to be tolerant of a negative feeling. Okay. And mindfulness is a really good way to do that. And the reason why that leads us so perfectly into the next slide. Emotional regulation, the solution is mindfulness, because mindfulness allows our children or us to identify and accept the emotional experiences that we have. Right. And again, I'll teach you all about what mindfulness is and how we do that. But the reality is, the reason why this works is because that's exactly what that middle line was for, right? We want to be tolerant of positive and negative affect, and that's exactly what mindfulness does. We're going to be able to identify and accept our emotional experiences. And it's typically, we do this with non-judgment, and I'll get all into how we do that. Move this out of the way just a little bit. So the management of distress and the modulation of like excitement and that like crazy good feelings, which we know some kids need work on too. Sustaining motivation. So like keeping kids motivated to do the things that they need to do, and motivated to do the things that make them feel good or make them feel better. It helps kids prioritize completed goals. It helps kids be like the adaptive adjustment of behavioral responses. So it increases our ability to manage our kids' behavior and how they respond to bad events or negative events, negative feelings. We also see that mindfulness actually increases emotional distress tolerance, like I said. And if it's low, kids with low emotional distress tolerance, that is very correlative with behavioral and emotional related issues. Particularly if we look at the learning process in kids in school, kids that don't have any emotional tolerance, more often than not, they're having behavioral concerns, they're having academic concerns, because they're unable to manage that emotional stress, whatever the emotional stress is that comes from home or comes from the that interpersonal reaction or interpersonal issues with friends or with other peers, right? That's going to affect them to the degree that they cannot focus on learning. They cannot actually complete the learning process. It disrupts that in the brain. Okay. And so what we talk about is mindfulness is a key approach to helping kids complete these tasks. I'm going to start kind of jumping into what mindfulness is. And mindfulness is intentional. So it's done with intention, right? Kind of us thinking about it and recognizing that we're doing this with a certain intent. It's present focused. So we avoid thinking about the future. We avoid thinking about the past. And it's a non-judgmental observation of experience. Okay. So you might look at things like sensory input, like the color of the wall is brown, right? It is not good or bad. We don't look at things like, oh, that looks really ugly, or, oh, that's really bad, right? It's the color of the wall is white. I feel the temperature in the room is cool, right? I hear the birds that are chirping. So there's focus on a observation of experience and how we direct and maintain attention on that while being in a very non-judgmental space. It's neither good nor bad. And so with all of this, trying to connect this to those slides, this is the way that we help kids mindfully engage, right? Stop some of the over engagement or the disengagement with their emotions. And so one thing I like to go over with families is that we're going to kind of continue talking a little bit about what mindfulness is and the benefits of it. And then we'll kind of jump into actually teaching you guys how to do it, and then so that you could teach your kids how to do it. One of the key things about mindfulness is like being curious, right? So when you're kind of starting to think about mindfulness and you're starting to think about living in the present moment and being really intentional and non-judgmental about your experience, right? And this could be like you're at the coffee shop and you find that you start getting irritated because you're in the line and it's long, right? What I want you to do is you start to become curious, right? And just open to the experience, not necessarily the judgment of something is good or bad, or, oh, this is like, I'm in this long line and this doesn't feel good. And this is a negative experience. And like, oh, I just need to get to work. Right. And then we spiral and the cortisol is there. And that's our experience, is this is a stressful, bad experience. Instead of that, we can kind of say, like, I wonder how the coffee is going to taste today, or I wonder how long I can sit in the line, and with like how long I can practice patience while I'm sitting in this line, or I'm going to be open to the experience as it is and try not to judge that, right? Maybe I'll pay attention to my breathing while I'm in the drive-through, or I'll pay attention to the noise that I hear around me while I'm in the line, right? And you're going to have some pay attention, you're going to pay more attention to your attention, right? And so that's kind of like a quick, easy way to like experience or what I mean by mindfulness. The essential thing about this is that it combats autopilot, right? I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I find that most people that I run into and I talk to about this sort of thing, they go on what they call autopilot, where there's you're maybe driving and you kind of like, you find that you get to work and maybe you realize like, I didn't really pay attention to anything during that car ride. Like I was kind of like in my head, or I was spaced out, or I was just kind of driving, right? And you're on autopilot, right? The essential thing there is like, you're not really there, right? You're kind of somewhere else. And so what happens with this is it keeps people from experiencing the moment, right? It keeps people either in a ruminative state or kind of that disengagement state. And so what this does is it also like disrupts that pattern of being reactive. If you're one of those people that gets really reactive to traffic, or really reactive to like waiting or long lines or whatever it may be, this practice of being very aware, very mindful, very intentional, very non-judgmental of the experience, this disrupts that reactivity that you have, okay? It's also going to strengthen your attention because you're actually paying attention to what you're paying attention to, okay? So you're practicing that skill of, I'm strengthening my attention. I'm able to focus on one thing, right? This is going to bring problem solving and your behavior under more kind of a conscious reflective regulation. So you're going to be able to go, oh, like I'm actually more conscious and reflective of what's happening to me because I'm here in this present moment. I'm not somewhere else. I'm not thinking about other things. I'm not ruminating on something that the person said to me or that person that cut me off, right? We're here. And so it interrupts some of that kind of autopilot, typical reactivity that we would normally have. Research shows that with mindfulness, this is particularly, especially in advanced meditators. So this might be somebody, we had a parent who talked about like really getting into meditation, and she might be an advanced meditator. But even after brief periods of mindfulness training, research has shown they have improved emotional regulation and improved attention, which is pretty amazing. If you think of just doing a brief period of mindfulness, say maybe you start practicing it once or twice a week, or even a couple times a week, if you could commit to that, research shows that it's going to improve your ability to manage your emotions and it's going to improve your attention. And those two things are awesome. Those two things are, if I could teach kids anything, it would be emotional regulation, right? How do I handle the emotions that don't feel good? How do I handle, like, that's crucial, right? I find that in even adults, even as parents. I talk about this a lot. Part of parenting, the biggest part of parenting is managing your emotions, right? Because your kids are going to do things that you don't like. They're going to do things that are like dumb or stupid or whatever, right? Because it's like things that bother us. They're not following the rules, right? That's kind of what parenting is consisting of, right? And so it's a really good, this is a really good form of helping people manage their emotions. And I think it's incredibly important. It would be at the top of my list for everybody to learn. And if that's, research is showing that this is improved, like, this is why I'm on board. Not only improved emotional regulation and attention, though, we've also shown by research that practicing even brief practice of mindfulness, you get an increase in positive mood, you get increased immune function, reduction in depressive lapses, greater empathy, essay reduction. So that was like, so like suicidal thoughts, stuff like that. They found that reduces. If someone, for people who experience that, practicing mindfulness can actually reduce that. And also reduced stress, right? So reduction in cortisol levels. Specifically, when they study children and adolescents who have been practicing mindfulness, even briefly, they have improvement in attention, improvement in social skills, which is another thing that I think is seriously lacking for kids. Sleep quality. So we talked a lot about sleep hygiene. Learning mindfulness can improve sleep quality, reduction in depression, anxiety, and somatic and externalizing symptoms. So kind of lumping that as like reduction in mental health symptoms. Let's kind of say that, because that's pretty broad. So again, the research has shown mindfulness is an evidence-based practice now. We encourage that families learn this and they teach their kids. And this is the data that's backing this. It's not just like, oh, I think mindfulness is helpful. It's actually been proven to improve all of those outcomes. So the first half of this, I kind of gave you guys a lot of background information, why I think stress is an issue, right? We went over kind of some typical problems with the current way kids either over-engage or under-engage, like disengage, and how to kind of help them do that thing in the middle, right? Mindfully engage. I talked a lot about the developmental framework and how this is affecting the brain, right? How hormone change and puberty onset and just literally kids growing and their developing brain, how that is affecting their stress. And then I've finally introduced mindfulness as the solution and why, with the data backing, why I believe mindfulness is incredibly important to teach your kids. So before I jump into this, I'm curious, does anybody have any questions that they want to throw in the chat or just kind of out loud? Any questions for you specifically? Anything that you're not clear on in terms of what we've talked about so far? Any questions at all so far?
I would like to add something to your presentation because of doing mindfulness for such a long time. What I have noticed also that your intuition increases, compassion for others increases. There's more focus on what's happening around and within you. So you are more in touch with yourself, with what's going on internally and externally, and you will get ideas sometimes that I think when you're stressed, you would not. So basically, something that definitely would, those aha moments, basically, things that would come to you that if you were stressed would not come to you. Definitely, I highly, highly recommend that because I have seen so many benefits and I'm still discovering more. So
That is
that's all.
so awesome, Dorothy. Thank you for sharing. And what you were talking about just now, the like aha moments that you get when that you wouldn't get if you were stressed or you weren't managing that stress well. I think that's really awesome and so incredibly important because you were saying it kind of like expands your, to me, that expands your ability, your problem solving, right? You have your brain is a better problem solver
Mhm.
when you're doing something like this because it's not bogged down by all that negative stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you able to raise above sometimes situations that otherwise you would not be able to. Um, because when you calm, you make better decisions, obviously, than you are distraught. When you are distraught, right? So I just see so much benefits, and again, highly, highly recommend. Just trust the process. It's a journey, but it's beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I think I
Well,
said that last time, but it's
I'm
almost
definitely like a proponent of mindfulness. Um, and in theory, I am so aligned with it and do it in my own meditation practice. But I do have to say, in a crisis mode, when you have, an angry tween, um, it is definitely more challenging to put those things into practice and step back and just, you know, not react and not sort of feed the emotional fire that is unfolding in front of me. And so I'm wondering if you have any sort of advice to sort of get to that wise mind, and not, you know, not be reactive, and just be the parent that I want to be, that I, you know.
yeah. Oh, that's such a wonderful comment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that up for anyone else if they have an answer before I give you mine because I love doing this. I like hearing from other parents. Dorrit was saying, how does she kind of have the moment to pause when something kind of crisis is happening or like she's got a tween who's angry or like kind of flipping their lid, so to speak. Like, how do you put this stuff in practice or what do you do as a parent? And if anybody has a suggestion as another parent, please chime in and then I'll give you my answer. So here's my answer, Dorit. I would say mindfulness, in my opinion, mindfulness is going to be more of a preventative thing, right? If you're practicing mindfulness, like one of the other parents was sharing, you're going to get better at like managing your emotions in the moment, like have improved ability to manage your impulses, your reactivity, things like that. So I think it's a preventative measure. You're not going to want to just not do it and then wait until a crisis happens and then be like, oh God, I need to do my mindfulness, right? Because that's going to be really hard. I would say that that's true for any really flooded experience when you're having like lots of emotions. A lot of people that I work with, the only thing that really works for them in those moments is I teach people types of grounding, and you could use something like a change in your environment. So like if you're inside, going outside, if you can grab a piece of ice and hold it in your hand, if you can run really cold water over your hands, right? If you can like do jumping jacks or run in place. Those types of grounding methods are going to be a little bit more effective at dealing with some sort of like crisis emotion. My lid's flipped, right? This is like I'm reacting. So that's what I would say. That's my answer. Do some preventative mindfulness so that when you get to that state, you might have some increased emotional ability to manage your emotions and problem solve and kind of think a little bit more clearly, right? And yet in the moment, you might not be able to slow down and be like, oh, let me take my deep breaths. It's like, I'm flooded, right? And so you could try some of those grounding methods that I just told you about. And alternatively, you feel the feeling, right? You lean in and you feel it, and you're maybe you envision a wave, right? The wave is going to kind of come in and it's going to crash, right? um and you're going to feel that feeling, and you're going to acknowledge that you're feeling it. I'm feeling really upset right now. You could even say, I would say it out loud, right, with whoever you're with, or um verbalize some of that. And the reality is then maybe once you're talking that through, and you do one of those grounding things, maybe that's calming that nervous system down a little bit, right? This could take 10 or 15 minutes. And I think as you do that, you're going to get better at it, right? You're going to, just like any type of sport or any type of weightlifting or like, you're going to get better as you practice. And so that would be my best kind of try this couple of strategies to do. I hope that's helpful, Dorit. And if anyone else has anything, please share. Ooh, Julie says take 10 deep breaths. So that's a really good one. If you can manage that in the moment, just start paying attention to your breath and start breathing in really deeply, through inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. 10 deep breaths is really good because what it does is it essentially signals to your brain to reset the sympathetic nervous system. And you're going to flood the brain with oxygen, right? That's what it's doing physiologically. So you could try that, flooding the brain, see if that really helps. I would say if you've never done that, sit down while you do it, because some people are like, oh gosh, like I get a little dizzy, because you're essentially flooding your brain, right? So mindfulness is a form of meditation. There was a question, how is mindfulness meditation? And then you say mindfulness is controlling your emotions. So mindfulness is not controlling your emotions. I hope that I didn't say that, because that's not. Mindfulness is a practice of experiencing the present moment. Mindfulness can help you control your emotions, and mindfulness is a form of meditation. So I hope that that clarifies. Okay, so here we go. we're going to get into, there was a specific type of methodology of mindfulness taught. And the cool thing about it is it's an acronym. And so I wanted to introduce that to you guys today because this is kind of a key methodology for mindfulness. This is how you do it. And if you can kind of remember, maybe you start to memorize this, maybe you screenshot this and you start to memorize that acronym. Okay, I'm going to practice mindfulness, right? I got to get my breathe acronym out. The B is going to stand for body, right? You want to be fully in the moment, aware of your body. So you might start to focus on, say, for example, right now, do you feel the chair against your bum or your legs? Do you feel the floor under your feet? Do you feel your back against the back of your chair? Do you feel any tension in your body? Do you feel pain anywhere in your body, right? So this is the body and awareness piece. That's B. And that's kind of the first step. You're going to start paying attention to your reflections, which means your thoughts, right? You're going to start understanding and working with the thoughts that you're having in that moment. You're going to also pay attention to your emotions. What kind of feelings am I having right now? Okay, I'm sitting here in this chair. I'm starting to have all these thoughts about what I'm supposed to be doing or what I'm eating for dinner, or maybe what somebody said to me in the line when I was getting coffee. I'm starting to feel really like irritated. Maybe I have like an annoying feeling, right? I'm like annoyed. And so you're doing this internally, right? Okay, I'm just going to sit with that for a minute. I can feel in my present body, I feel kind of a little bit of a pain in my right foot. I'm feeling kind of annoyed. And we're going to give attention to that, okay? So we're going to integrate the awareness of our thoughts, our feelings, and our body, and we're going to just pay full attention to that. These are the things that are happening to me right now. And we're just going to focus on that, okay? Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever emotions you're having, whatever thoughts you're having, whatever your body feels like, we're just going to kind of focus on that, okay? All of our attention is going to that. And we're going to focus on the T. Take it as it is, right? This is that non-judgment. We're reducing any self-judgment. We're going to increase total acceptance. This is how it is, right? I'm feeling this pain. I'm having this thought. I'm feeling this feeling, and this is how it is. I'm going to just focus on this, focus on my experience. There is no good or bad. I'm not labeling this thing as good or bad. This is just what it is. I'm here, okay? The H is kind of getting you into this healthy habit, right? You're going to start cultivating this and integrating mindfulness into your daily life. So body, reflections, which is also thoughts, emotions, attention, take it as it is. And then you're going to kind of move into the space of healthy habits. So I'm going to start doing this. And E, the overall goal of the program is emotional balance. Okay. And so sometimes people refer to this advantage, this empowerment of practicing mindfulness. We're gaining the inner edge, right? We're gaining the inner edge of our bodies, of our spiritual experience. And so cultivating that balance through mindfulness, that's the goal, right? We want to be emotionally balanced, and that's the last E. So if you jive with this and you like this, I would say, like I said, memorize the acronym. The really important part comes with the BREAT, right? That's how you live the mindfulness in each experience. Just start practicing it. Go through your head. B, body. What do I feel in my body right now? What's my experience? Do I feel the chair under me? Do I feel the wind in my hair? If I'm walking, do I feel my steps or my pace? What does my gait feel like? Do I have a leg that's falling asleep? Right? Do I feel any tension anywhere? Focus on your thoughts. What kind of thoughts am I having right now? Right? Most people do not think about their thoughts. And we have the average human has anywhere from 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So if we can kind of slow down, right, get off autopilot, start thinking a little bit more about our reflections, our thoughts, we're going to become incredibly aware of like what our automatic thoughts are, those 70 to 80,000 things that our brain is telling us a day. So again, the attention, just focusing on those things and taking it as it is. No judgment. It's not good or bad. It's just an experience. Okay. So this is a cool method. You can try it. If you don't like it, you don't have to use this one. There's another one for you if you don't like the Learn to Be acronym breathe. So we're going to go into this mindfulness activity. And what I want all of you to do, if you're able to, obviously if you're driving or you're at work, you probably can't do this, but I think we have enough time for this. We'll go ahead and I can guide you through this mindfulness activity. It's called 4-5-6 breathing. And you guys can try it out. This can be something you decide whether you like or not. And again, this goes back to that deep belly breathing. Okay. This is a great way to restore calm when we're stressed. It might not be good in a crisis situation. You could try it. It might. It just depends on you and your individual preferences and temperament and however you can handle things. What I want you to do currently is get really comfortable wherever you are. Sit in a chair, lie down, something, get comfortable. I want you to take a really deep inhale down into your belly and a full exhale through your mouth. Now I want you to breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4. You're going to hold your breath for a count of 5. And you're going to breathe out for a count of 6. We're going to repeat this deep breath 3 times. Take a deep inhale down into your belly and a full exhale through your mouth. Now breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take a deep inhale down into your belly. Full exhale through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold for 5, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take a deep inhale down into your belly. Full exhale through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for 5, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For those of you guys that did this exercise with me, how do you feel physically or emotionally after breathing that deeply? I hope Ani did it while she was sitting there.
I did.
Does
I
it make
did. Yeah.
you sleepy? How does it make you feel?
I think it helps to like reset and just take a moment for yourself.
Totally. Yeah, because we're not breathing like this, right? Day to day. We're like, whatever, we're on autopilot. We're just breathing as we normally do, right? Which is not like this. We're not being intentional. We're not breathing really deeply. We're not breathing into the belly. We're not resetting our nervous system. Yeah. So it's like you get to take a moment for yourself, that intentional focus to just breathe. Really good, really solid, deep breaths, holding it a little bit, exhaling. Yeah, I'm glad you did that. Yeah, so I even tell people do this like 5 times. I feel like, of course, I'm kind of narrating for you guys, so I don't get to really share with you what my experience was like because I'm trying to count and help you guys keep on that. But when I do these, I almost get this like flood of it. It almost just feels like, I don't know if you can describe your brain tingling, right? It just kind of gets like, ooh, like that was nice, right? Even if it's not like a total reset, you like Ani said, you get to take a couple of moments for yourself, hopefully reset a little bit, right? It's usually I don't get the someone said I heard my heart. Oh, that's amazing. And Julie says, I do it while driving to work to set the tone for my day. And then I do it driving home to prepare for family. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And so I used to actually have a ritual when I was active duty. It was a very stressful job. And so of course I also had to wear the uniform and everything. And I would, when I would get home, I would immediately take my uniform off and I would do something like this, right? So it's like hard reset. I don't want these clothes on. Most of the time I'd even take a shower. It was like I would get all of that off me, right? And reset. Um, what a cool experience. You get to hear your heart, you get to connect with your body in that way. Yeah, it's like giving yourself a little hug, giving your heart a hug when you get to do that. So really, really cool. Thank you guys for participating, those of you that did. And if you couldn't participate, or you felt weird participating right now, take it home with you and try this. You can take a screenshot and if you sense like maybe your child coming home from school is really, elevated or stressed, like try this with them. You could even, there's so many on YouTube and like different apps that you can literally just put on like a mindfulness breathing audio and you guys could do it in the car together and like, oh, hey, like that was silly. That felt a little awkward. Like, what do you think about that? And just kind of getting them exposed to it can be really half the battle. Okay, so here's some tips I want to give you guys to help your kids be more mindful. One of my top tips, and I give this a lot, and this goes back to some of the positive discipline classes that I did for you guys in the past couple of months, and that is listening to your child with your full attention. And I don't know about you guys, but you could probably count on one hand, I certainly can, the times that I am fully present with my full attention with my kids. And that's simply out of like necessity, right? We're driving, we're cooking, we're cleaning, we're taking care of the house, we're doing things in the yard, we're working, we're busy, right? And so we go on that autopilot mode. And I am fully okay with saying, like, I do not listen to my kids with my full attention enough. I would love to do it more. And so this is a really good thing to start practicing. We're all vulnerable to the phones and the screens, and like we're on our, devices. We've got the watches now and the just all the, that's taking our attention. And I'll talk about this a lot in our next class, particularly with children in schools and how their attention is, being largely impacted by screens, but like we're there too. Okay. So this can help your kid be more mindful. You listen to them with your full attention. You turn everything off, you stop what you're doing, you look at them and you give them your full attention. I can guarantee that this tip, if used with consistency, can do wonderful things for your relationship with your child. Accepting your child and yourself, of course, without judgment, right? We're accepting and acknowledging their feelings as their feelings without being overwhelmed by them. So I know a lot of times as parents, we kind of take on their feelings as like, I have to fix this, or this reflects on me, or I'm worried what will happen if I don't address this, right? And I can encourage you as an expert, accepting them and their feelings without being overwhelmed by them and judging them goes an incredibly long way in parenting. So just accepting, oh my gosh, like you seem really frustrated. Like I'm here, I'm listening, I'm here for you, right? Just accepting and acknowledging their feelings. And like, man, this is really hard. I want to be here for you. It's hard for me. I don't know what to say. Can I just sit with you? Right? Statements just as simple as that. Imagining your child's feelings and then matching your response to that. So instead of like, it's kind of that like empathy factor, right? Imagining how your child is feeling, trying to put yourself in their shoes, and then matching your response to that. Like, how would I want someone to respond to me if I was feeling that or experiencing that? What would I need? And then doing that, right? So oftentimes that's going to be like responding with love, connection, compassion. And so just being there, you know, that sense of empathy, imagining their feelings and matching your response to that instead of this like problem solving. How do I make it better? How do I fix it? My fear is involved. One other really good tip is like managing your own feelings and reactions. That's a big one, which I'm sure a lot of parents are like, okay, how do I do that? Right. And you do that by doing some of these other things and practicing mindfulness and getting your own help and support. And I think managing your feelings as a parent is one of the hardest things to do, right? When we're parenting, we kind of have to reparent ourselves. And so definitely just trying to like, oh, okay, like my child's telling me something. I know I get really triggered when this happens, or I get really activated when this happens. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start doing like 10 deep breaths if I start feeling that feeling when I'm around them, right? Like planning out a plan of action to manage your own feelings in those situations can be incredibly helpful, right? And you're just going to like manage that reaction. Okay, I'm feeling really like angry that my child's not listening to me right now. I'm going to sit in that for a minute. I'm angry because they won't listen to me. Like, where is this coming from? Have I felt this before? Do I need to like reparent myself? Did I get not listened to as a child? Did my parents get mad at me all the time for feeling things, right? Like processing through some of your own reactions can be really, really helpful. And one of the tips is show compassion, whether to yourself or to your children. I find as a therapist that so many people have very little experience with being kind to themselves. We are often so harsh to ourselves and we are not kind. Okay. And so that's problematic for a lot of reasons, but one way that you can kind of work this into your day-to-day, it's a strategy that I give to a lot of my patients in my own private practice, is when you're talking to yourself, either you can imagine a picture, visualize a picture of you as a baby, as a young child, as a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, and talk to yourself as if you were talking to that kid, that person, right? In that picture. You can even find a picture of yourself. How would you show compassion to that child? How would you talk to that person? And alternatively, if you don't like that and that's a little bit too out of your comfort zone, try talking to yourself as though you were your best friend. What would you say to your best friend? if you were struggling with something, or you did something or said something, or you were dealing with grief or depression or anxiety or whatever, stress, stuff at work, you know, interpersonal stress, relationship stress, divorce, like parenting stuff, conflict. How would you show compassion to your best friend if they were in that moment? And then talk to yourself as if you were that person, right? That's how we can practice showing ourselves compassion in a really like tangible, practical way. And so I have a couple more resources to share with you guys. What I want to do though, before I do that, is take any questions that anybody has and answer some questions. And if there's none, we can kind of do some of these exercises. So in the chat, we talked a lot about mindfulness, and there's another take-home exercise to practice. I've bolded what you should either read or say out loud if you're going to do this exercise with your kids. And so you can take that mindfulness exercise home. And then alternatively, I want to share with you guys some of the other skills. I do think mindfulness is a focus. I think that my hope for you is that you've learned at least what mindfulness is and why scientifically this is so backed and such an incredible skill to learn. There is a PDF in the chat, and it's called the Coping Skills List.pdf. And what I'd love to do is I'm going to open that here on my computer and show you guys what that is.
While you're doing that, I just want to say thank you for bringing up the picture yourself as a child business, and what would you tell your best friend business. And I'm really grateful for that, Jem. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I hope I'm saying your name right, Dorit.
Oh, it's Dorit, but thank you. Yeah. No, a lot of people say Dorit because Charles Dickens wrote a book called Little Dorrit. But yeah, it's spelled like Dorit, but it's pronounced like Doritos. Dorit.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Dorit, what a pretty name. Yeah, I didn't even know about the Charles Dickens book. I read it like I saw it, and it's a different type of eye. So anyway, thank you for letting me know that. And you are so welcome. I think that is a good little gem that a lot of us, yeah, even just envisioning like that awareness that we don't treat ourselves nicely, and like, why am I talking to myself this way? If I were to try to talk to a 4-year-old me, and like, how cute was 4-year-old me, right? Like, I could talk to that person really gently and really kindly and compassionately. And like, why not talk to ourselves like that? So, yes, you're welcome. And I love that. I hope, again, if you take anything, maybe somebody takes that. Talk to yourself a little gentler, because we're all, I think, pretty typically, we're all pretty harsh and critical of ourselves. Okay, so there is a list that I've pulled up, and it's, again, in the chat. You can download it. This says specifically trauma coping skills, and there are some things here that are particularly aimed at trauma, and yet you can generalize all of this. If you don't have trauma, you can use this stuff. If you have trauma, you could definitely use this, and there will be some things that are, like I said, specific to that. Coping skills are the things, the actionable things that we can do to help manage our mental health, right? Our well-being. They calm our body, our brain, they help us think clearly. And these are just little tidbits that you can use, take with you, share with your kids. I did a whole class on resilience. So that first block, develop resilience. If you came to that, you're going to be really familiar. You can use all those things like setting and working towards goals, focusing on your strengths, discover your purpose or passion. This is really crucial. I mean, for all of us, but like a lot of kids don't really know, like, what's my meaning? What's my purpose? What is my passion in life? Right. I see a lot of young adults who are like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I want to go to school for, or so this is really helpful, like implanting this stuff with your children and helping them problem solve and practice optimism, right? Think about their strengths, think about what they can learn from difficulty. These are all really great skills to cultivate. And resilience is so crucial when it comes to mental health. So thanks, Julie. Thank you guys. If you have to go early, I'm just glad you're with us. I gave you guys in the emotional physical release box, that's that physical grounding that I was telling you guys about. And again, I teach my patients this because it's one of the only type of skills that can actually take the energy away from your limbic system, which is that emotional center of the brain when you're really activated. Push-ups, planks, jumping jacks, running in place, going for a run, taking a cold shower, squeezing or holding ice, right? Crying, dancing, punching bag, or doing kickboxing, right? Something like you're really activating that part of the brain that it will start taking away from the emotional activation. And so that's as real as it gets. Those are the skills that I teach people who are extremely dysregulated and have, pretty significant emotional regulation issues. Like, try those things if you're incredibly activated. And you can try this with your child, right? Teach them. Let's see, some relaxation skills, right? Warm bath or shower, stretching, yoga. Again, mindfulness or meditation, visualization. So one I do with a lot of people is you visualize a peaceful place or your inner peaceful place. This is something I'm certified in EMDR, and it's a big modality that I use in my own therapy, working with people who have trauma or anxiety, depression, substance abuse, things like that. You create an inner peaceful place. And what that does is it activates parts of the brain, again, because you close your eyes, you visualize down to every sense, right? What do I hear? What do I see? Where am I? Am I in the mountains? Am I in the woods? Am I at a river? Do I hear birds chirping? Do I smell the woody scents from the trees? Do I feel a breeze on my skin, right? What's the temperature like? We go into this. You visualize as if you were there, your inner peaceful place. And if you need to, you can activate that, right? You can access that if you're stressed and you need to relax, or you need to calm that nervous system, right? Inner peaceful place is one of my favorite tools to teach people. Belly breathing, you can do what we call like acupressure breathing, belly eye roll breathing, the 4-5-6 breathing that I taught you guys. You can use all that stuff, all those different kinds of breathing exercises. Like I said, some of those are specific to trauma. You could do some gratitude journaling. That's a really good positive coping skill that actually has tons of research backing. People who engage in gratitude journaling on a regular basis, they find have much improved mood and psychological function. So think about 3 things that you're grateful for at the end of the day. Like maybe you're going to bed, or maybe you and your spouse, or you and your partner or you and your child at dinner, or like at bedtime, right? You're going to say 3 things that you're grateful for. And no matter how small, it could be like, I'm grateful that I didn't get hurt today. I'm grateful that the sun was shining. I'm grateful that I had the amount of water that my body needed today. Right? Any 3 things that you can think of, and make them different each day. Let's see. Some of these, the self-care or the health habits, right? I'm big on that. I'm big on like, what do you put into your body? How much water are you drinking? Are you eating nutritious whole foods? How much processed stuff are you getting? Alcohol, nicotine, stuff like that. Sugar, right? Are you getting out in nature? What's your sleep hygiene like? And then movement. How much are you moving? That's kind of my little basis of like, how are you taking care of yourself? And what are you, how are you taking care of your body? Those kind of health habits can be incredible coping skills, particularly when we talk about exercise or movement. And when I say exercise, it doesn't have to be vigorous. It can be walking, it can be moving, it can be stretching, it can be yoga, it can be Pilates, right? It can be anything, but like exercising kills cortisol. We know that if you're stressed, like any type of movement is going to help kill that hormone in your body, just so that you're aware. Distraction, right? Playing with pets, walking your animals, creative outlets, distraction, like coloring, puzzles, watching movies, stuff like that. I talked about the grounding skills. So like doing your mindfulness, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a great grounding skill. And essentially what you're going to do, you're going to name 5 things that you see, name 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And if you can't taste anything, then it's something that you would like to taste. Asking for help, talking to your doctor, taking the kids to the doctor if you find that maybe their mental health is not great, or they're dealing with some of this stuff, or they're really struggling with stress. Same for yourself, therapist, counselor, talking with supportive friends, family, and teachers or mentors. A lot was said in the last couple classes about getting kids engaged in like sports or some sort of like movement. Like I said, it doesn't have to be really active, but finding some options that's within your means and within your resources to do. I should maybe do a class next time on like connection, right? Because I think that like the opposite of addiction is connection to me. So people that become addicted to things, the opposite of that is not sobriety. The opposite of that is connecting with people. And so having a support system, having people around you, having a social support network that's healthy. If your kids don't have it, get it. If you can't find it, ask for help, because it's so important. So my hope is that you can take this coping skills list with you. It's in the chat. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and flip to, this was the exercise. Again, you have the slides. You can take this home with you and try it. Here's the contact and the resources. There's a New York Times article here it's a great resource for parents. So you can use that link. I've got Ani's information and my information here. If you guys need to contact us for any reason, there's our contact information. I am open to taking any questions now. If there's any questions. Oh, I forgot to say, Ani just put a short survey for our session today. If you could give us some feedback, maybe tell us what you like, what you don't like, any suggestion for future topics or things that you guys want to hear about or learn about. We love feedback because we're here for you. So please fill it out if you're willing and able. That's in the chat. If there's no questions, that's all I've got, but I'm going to take it over to Annie. You let me know if you've got questions either in the chat or just by talking. And otherwise, thank you guys all so much for being here and for engaging and the discussion. It's been really awesome. I'm pretty passionate about this, so I'm really glad you guys are all here.